Hi everyone. In this video I want to talk you through the Essay 1 assignment that you're going to be working on over the coming week. So I thought I'd talk you through the handout for that assignment to just sort of expand on and clarify the details of what you will be doing. So let's look at that handout. So we're of course going to go to the assignment section. Again, as I've said before, those assignments are also linked within the weekly schedule, so you can also get there that way. So we're talking about Essay 1, and you'll see that there's a handout attached to that folder. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, so here's what you're going to be doing. For this assignment, you're going to write a roughly 5-page paper. As I say, it can be longer than that. I don't have any problem with longer papers. If it's considerably less than 5 pages, it probably means you haven't done all the things that the assignment asks. So I definitely give you the advice to, when you write the paper, if it comes in under 5 pages, go back to the assignment handout and make sure you've done everything, okay? So what you'll be doing in the essay is answering the question, what does anthropology offer to the study of dogs, okay? And that's obviously a broad question, so I've given you some more specific prompts to work on as you try to answer that broad question. What I say here is, describe what is unique about an anthropological approach to this subject being dogs. So an anthropological approach, I'm including things like the methods that anthropologists use, the theories and ideas, right? So think broadly about all the different sort of components of what an anthropological approach is. As I also note here in the instructions, I want you to talk about both archaeology and cultural anthropology. As you know, we've talked about both of those subfields from anthropology, so I want to make sure that both get discussed in your essay, all right? And to sort of support the points you make in this essay, you're going to draw on at least 4 class readings, okay? So that means any of 4 of the articles or book chapters that have been assigned in the course to date, all right? Okay. So, really what I'm trying to sort of shoot for with this assignment is to give you an opportunity to reflect back on what you've learned in the first part of the course about the subject of dogs, but even more specifically about what it looks like to study a subject like dogs from a particular sort of scholarly perspective, okay? So, it can be a very sort of broad discussion of what those sort of major contributions that an anthropological approach adds to this study. And I want you to back up those broader points with specific points, evidence, details, examples, terms, etc. from the readings, okay? Now, in terms of employing or making use of those 4 articles, I give you some specific information here about how to reference your sources. I do want you to reference them, but I don't need you to use like a formal citation process. You're not going to be drawing on stuff from outside of class, so clearly, like, I know all the publication details and we're all going to be drawing on that same pool of assigned readings, so I don't need you to have like a references cited section or anything like that, okay? Now, that said, I do need to know whose article you're talking about when you bring up a certain point. So what I give you in this part of the handout is a suggestion for kind of a really simple, basic way to make sure you indicate whose work you're referencing without getting super formal about it, okay? So what I say is you can do something, sort of approach it as you want to note the author name, which can be simply the last name of the author, and the year, right? So that's kind of a very truncated, basic form of citing the piece, all right? So something like Thornburg 2020, right? If there's a lot of authors, you can just use the et al, right? So Perry et al, right? Just to keep it simple. You don't need to list out every author. And you don't need to reproduce the title of the article or book chapter. That just takes up too much space and it's just distracting, right? So if you want to talk about Thornburg's piece, right, in your essay, it's simple enough to just say Thornburg 2020, and I'll know exactly which piece you're talking about, okay? All right, so that's in terms of referencing the sources as you use them. Another key point that I explain here in the handout is when you use those sources, you will not be quoting them, okay? There are no direct quotes allowed in this essay. The reason for that is what I really want you to do is to, having read those articles and book chapters, process them, understand them, sort of digest them, and then be able to talk about them, write about them in your own words, right? So what you're going to be doing then is summarizing and paraphrasing what you read, right? You need to accurately represent what the point was of one of those authors, but you need to understand it well enough that you can then write about it using your own words, okay? So please be clear on that. I do not want to see any direct quotes from the articles. I do want to see you drawing on the ideas from those articles, but using your own language, okay? Of course, as with all assignments, no use of AI at all. You should not be using any sort of online software when you write your paper. I just want to see, you know, your writing, warts and all. Don't worry about grammatical errors, right? That's part of the writing process. So please do not put your paper or the prompt through any kind of online writing software, okay? Including, of course, ChatGPT and the other AI kind of programs. Okay. So that's the basic instructions. Like I said, 5 pages. I think that's sort of a good ballpark. If it's much less, it's probably not going to have answered the question well. But if it's longer because you have lots of things to say or you really want to bring together a bunch of evidence, that's fine. All right. You're going to submit it to the assignment folder by the due date. And it should be either a Word or PDF file, just so I can make sure that I can access it. The bottom half of the handout is the rubric that I will use to grade your paper. So again, one of the reasons I'm giving you this rubric in advance is as you work on your paper, you can sort of check yourself against that rubric to make sure that you've covered all your bases, okay? So I suggest you, knowing what the assignment is, that you draft out, right, write out a first draft, and then make sure you look at those criteria and ask yourself, right, like, have I done this? Have I thoroughly met this criterion in the first draft of my essay? And then there's an opportunity to go back and, like, if you need to pump up some more evidence or you need to sort of more carefully articulate something, you can go back and as you revise it, you can make sure you've met those criteria, okay? So that's the reason to give you the rubric, is just so you know from the beginning, here's sort of the standard against which I want to write my own paper, and here's a way to know whether I've sort of satisfied the expectations for the assignment, okay? So I think this is a pretty straightforward assignment. Again, there's a lot of directions to go. There's not going to be one response to this question, obviously. But what I'm looking for is sort of a thorough and careful reflection on what we've learned in the course and the mustering of specific points and evidence from the things that we've read in the class. So I'll stop there. Any questions, of course, let me know. Take care. Bye-bye.